Hello, it's Kelvin Chin here. How are you today? Hope everybody's doing fine in this 2021 uh, challenging time that we're living in these days. Um, I wanted to share with you some thoughts uh, about my new book that's just come out recently. This is the new book. It's called Marcus Aurelius. Trying to get this without a glare on the screen here. Marcus Aurelius Updated 21st Century Meditations on Living Life. So, a little bit about the book, a little bit about background about why I wrote the book and so forth. Basically, the book is a collection of about 66, 67 essays, short essays. Mostly they're about 2 or 3 pages long. For those of you who are old enough to know what the Reader's Digest was, it's a kind of a Reader's Digest version of how to live life a little bit more enjoyably. That's really the kind of the overarching objective of the book. Um, and I'll explain to you in a few minutes why I call it Marcus Aurelius Updated. But it's divided into themes. Like 4 different themes in the book, chapter themes: life principles, meditation, and the spiritual. And I thought I'd just share with you just some of the titles of some of those essays. For example, in chapter 2, emotions: success, winning, and happiness; suffering and happiness; unconditional love; friendship; the nuances of forgiveness; grieving the loss of normalcy during the COVID-19 pandemic; balance; ego; transcending cruelty and getting beyond bullying; spiritual materialism; sex and spirituality; self-interest; how to choose the right meditation technique. So this is chapter 4. That's just a sample of the first theme of emotions. There's probably about 12 to 24 essays in each of these 4 chapters. Meditation, this is a few of the essays. How to choose the right meditation technique for you. Why must meditation be easy to be effective? Effortlessness and self-acceptance, how do they relate with each other? And then in the chapter on the spiritual topics, chapter 5, attachment and illusion. Can we manifest things in our life? Spiritual teachings that create suffering. The meaning of life. Here's another one: destiny and losing a child. Which is obviously a terrible, terrible, terrible thing to have happen. If any of that's happened to any of you, I work with a lot of parents who've lost their children. So I wrote an essay about how do we think about that really mind-boggling topic. Online dating with angels. That's a title that grabs you, right? But I talk about angels in a couple of these essays here, several of the essays in the spiritual section, in different ways, and communicating with the other side. Those of you who don't know me, I've been meditating for over 50 years now. I've been teaching meditation for 47 years. Thousands of people around the world. I taught the first meditation courses in the history of West Point Military Academy, and also in the U.S. Army and in the U.S. Air Force. I continue to work with veterans and so forth in active military. But I've been teaching meditation for many years. I started having memories that go back centuries of my own spontaneously, and I've also had many communications with the other side of the veil. So I talk a little bit about how do we think about that? How do we think about this idea of communicating with the other side and so forth in some of these essays? Here's another essay: Unbundling Enlightenment. That's the title. And the last one I'll just mention is Ego and God. So this is a reminds me to say this is a non-religious approach. As some of you have worked with me, you know that my work is non-religious. It may be spiritual at times, but non-religious. Not. I work with all different religions across the world, and I work with atheists and agnostics. It does not matter. But I do have a couple of essays in here where I talk about this concept, this idea of God, and what about that? Chapter 1, those of you who are listening carefully, notice that I skipped chapter 1 and I talked right about chapter 2, which is the chapter on emotions. Chapter 1, I talk about my favorite Marcus Aurelius meditations. So what I do in chapter 1 is just a few, several of maybe a dozen or so of my favorite maxims. These are short. They're short suggestions, we'll call them, by Marcus Aurelius, who wrote them between 167 and 180 AD, so a couple thousand years ago, for his own personal benefit, for his own self-reflection, for his own contemplation. And so people in modern times have collected his thoughts and put them together into books, and they've called them Meditations of Marcus Aurelius, the 2nd century Roman emperor, who was not just an emperor, but was a philosopher. What I do in the first chapter is I have, as it says, I have a selection of the favorite ones that kind of struck me personally. And I have, for example, living in the present. That's my summary title of his maxim. And I quote the maxim, the translation, obviously, of his maxim. And then I have a couple of paragraph comment on how I view that maxim through the lens of 21st century, my 21st century mind, or filter, you may say. I talk about, there's another one here from him, balance and perspective. Another one on free will, where he talks about this concept of making our own decisions. What about free will and destiny? Happiness. He talks about happiness in another one, and cruelty in another one. So those are that's how I started off, because I feel a resonance with Marcus Aurelius, let's just say, and I resonated with the fact, a number of things. For example, he did not intend to write these as a book. He just wrote them for himself. As I said, for his own self-reflection, his own thinking about how he could live his own life and more effectively, and how could he lead as a leader of many millions of people in a judicious, in a just and judicious way, and in a way that was the least hurtful to the most people, and in the most kind way, we could say, in our 21st century language, and yet in an effective way. But also, how could he do this in a way that, as little as possible, because nothing is perfect, as little as possible infringe upon his own pursuit of his own personal happiness, which, as you can imagine, is a challenge when you're leader of an empire of many millions of people. At the time, about a quarter of the world's population was under the rule of the Roman emperor. So again, back to why did I write this book? Why, when, and how did I write this book? Well, when was it's a collection of essays, as I said, over the last several years I've written these. And it's happened at different times, literally while I'm waking up in the morning, I have an idea. And then I take my iPhone out. Here's my iPhone. I take my iPhone out and I dictate into my iPhone these ideas that I have. And then sometimes I dictate actual sentences, not just bullet points, but actual sentences. And then I go back later when I wake up and I clean it up and create it into an essay, one of these short 1 or 2 or 3, 4-page essays. It would happen to me. Sometimes these ideas would come to me when I'm in the shower. I call them shower thoughts. One of my old friends used to call these shower thoughts. We would have shower thoughts. He's off with his family in Orange County, and I was here in LA with my family, and we'd go meet at our office, and we go, oh, I had a shower thought today. Because why? You're in a shower and you're kind of relaxing, and your mind is more free flowing. So a lot of these essays came out of that kind of moment, or when I'm driving alone in my car, or flying on an airplane, or whatever, to go give a talk or speak at a conference somewhere. Some of these ideas would pop up in those random moments. Is my point. And as I said, just like Marcus Aurelius, I did not intend to put them in the form of a book initially, but when a friend suggested that I do that, I thought, for what purpose? Because those of you who know me, have worked with me, that I'm a very pragmatic, a very practical person. So I'm like, why, how could this be helpful? Well, it could be helpful for people because it's been helpful for me personally to think about these things. So like Marcus, I too have initially thought about these ideas in this book for my own self-development, because I think that's ultimately where it all happens for each of us in our eternal life journey, so to speak, right? But they've also been helpful as I've woven some of these ideas and concepts into my classes, both my meditation classes, my afterlife classes, and some of the other classes that I teach, and some of the workshops that I've done at various conferences that I've spoken at. So again, I looked at it kind of as a guide in a sense, or maybe a handbook. Maybe I started looking at this book itself kind of like a handbook, perhaps a handbook for living life, in much the same way that Marcus himself wrote the maxims for his own personal use to guide himself in his own life 2,000 years ago. Some of you who've read the book already, and thank you for, being enthusiastic about letting me know your thoughts about the book. Some of you have read the book. I love hearing people's reactions and thoughts about the book, how it's helped them and so forth. But for those of you who've read the book, know that in the introduction, this book just came out on Saturday, by the way, and it was the #1 hot bestseller in the New Age section of Amazon. But in the introduction, you'll notice that I mentioned Frederick the Great. So I thought I'd just say a few words here in this this talk today with you. But why do I mention Frederick the Great in the introduction? So I'll let you read the introduction itself, and I won't give away the details that are in that. But let me just say some stuff about that that's not explicitly in the book. So I don't say this in the book explicitly, but some people think that he, Frederick the Great, who lived in the 1700s, by the way, that he and Marcus Aurelius may have been the same personality. So as I said earlier, Marcus lived when? He lived in the 2nd century. So around 121 AD. He was born in April 26, 121. He died in around 180 AD. And Frederick the Great lived, who was king of Prussia, by the way. Frederick the Great lived in the 1700s. So was Frederick a reincarnation of Marcus Aurelius? I'll leave that for you to decide. But I do point out some of those seemingly, we'll call them inexplicable coincidences in my introduction of the book between these two personalities that are known personalities, obviously, historically. So again, what's the purpose of this collection of essays? It's to help people worldwide. And as is the goal with all of my nonprofit work that I do now full-time, it's all about, my work is all about reducing fears and increasing understanding about various key issues that we can all use more understanding about to help us live life more enjoyably. That's really, what all of my work is about. The focus of my classes, etc. Today, because these days, in other words, today, um, because to me that is the meaning of life, right? To enjoy our lives more. Um, so I hope the book is useful for you, helpful for you and your friends and your loved ones, as I said, as a guidebook almost to help us think about these various, sometimes thorny issues, sometimes issues that don't make a lot of sense to us. Maybe I can help you through this book make some sense out of some of this stuff in life that happens to us, that does not make sense at first blush, at first look, at the issues that may happen to us, these experiences. Sometimes they don't make sense. So maybe my book can help you look at them maybe in a different way to try to make some sense out of what can be made sense of, and to let go, quite frankly, of the stuff that we cannot make sense of, which is okay. It's okay not to be able to understand everything. I don't think that's possible, quite frankly, and I talk about that in the book. So I think that's also an element, you could say, of our successful pursuit of happiness. And when I say happiness, another way of saying the same thing is just inner contentment, inner peace with things. I think another element of that is letting go of our need to completely, fully understand and explain everything. I don't think that's fully possible, quite frankly. But I think it is possible to consistently think about things in a clearer way, and that's what I try to do in the book. You'll let me know how successful I was. So the paperback is now available on Amazon in the US, Canada, Europe, Asia, and Australia. And more countries will be added to the list within those continents. South America as well, and so forth, will be added eventually, and so forth. Africa, etc. More countries will come soon via Ingram Spark. Ingram Spark is another publishing company that deals a little bit more widespread internationally than Amazon does, although Amazon, as you guys know, is the 800-pound gorilla out there, a big company, in other words, that's really spreading its tentacles everywhere. But Ingram Spark is historically the one that academic organizations, academic universities, and schools, and libraries, and so forth, eventually my book will be up on barnesandnoble.com, for example, but it'll be via Ingram Spark, because barnesandnoble.com obviously is a direct competitor with amazon.com. But they will have my book. Other online suppliers will have my book, just like they have my first book. This is my first book, Overcoming the Fear of Death. Many of you have read this book already. It's on Amazon, and it's on all these other online suppliers as well. But eventually, Marcus Aurelius Updated will also be on all those similar online suppliers like Barnes & Noble and so forth, once the Ingram Spark publishing connection is made by my book manager in the next week or two. Kindle version, there will be an ebook, a Kindle version of Marcus Aurelius Updated as well, and it'll be available on Amazon in about a week to 10 days. We're in the process of uploading the Kindle version right now to Amazon. And like I said, please let me know what you think about it after you read it, or whether you read the paperback or the ebook version. Also, if you found this video helpful, please feel free to Facebook friend me if we're not already Facebook friends. Follow me on Instagram. LinkedIn, or Twitter. And you could subscribe to my YouTube channel. If you have not already subscribed to my YouTube channel, there's about 100 plus videos there that are all obviously available for free for you to watch. So again, just in closing, be safe, love your loved ones, and love yourself, and enjoy living life. Okay, I'll see you again soon. Thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoy the book. I hope you find it helpful in your own pursuit of your own happiness. Take care now.